It's a good time to be an RPG fan, with The Witcher 3 and Final Fantasy X HD's release on PlayStation 4 reminding us why we both love the genre. Both are amazing games, but they couldn't be more different from each other.
Which kicked off a battle here at BitSocket over which is better, Eastern RPGs
or Western RPGs. This is East versus West.
One of my favourite things about Japanese RPGs is being told a good, well-crafted story. Final Fantasy X HD reminds me how good the feeling is of just letting the producers take you by the hand and guiding your way through the world they've created and the story they want to tell.
This is your story.
I missed the game the first time round, but sinking into the world of Spira and getting to know the characters has been wonderful so far, even if the main character Tidus bugged my tits at the beginning.
Right on!
Yes, the dodgy script and voice acting can sometimes bulldoze through and obliterate the subtlety of some moments.
Gonna cry again, cry.
But it doesn't stop me from enjoying the story for what was intended. This is a deeply personal story hiding behind the stylings of an epic, which is kind of a recurring theme in JRPGs. Look, I know a lot of the time JRPGs can be described as a bunch of anime stereotypes banding together to kill God, but a lot of my favourites use those clichés as a starting point to tell unique and touching stories about their characters. Take Grandia 2, which ticks every cliché box you can think of and still manages to make you care for its cast through some brilliant writing. Main dude Ryudo is a spiky-haired sword-wielding mercenary with a chip on his shoulder. Who hasn't heard that one before? But hearing his story and seeing his relationship with other characters develop, especially between him and his brother, the major villain, really made me warm to him.
The long-lost brothers meet at last.
All these games tell resolutely linear stories, but that's part of the appeal. We're being told what the creators want to tell us, and that's something you just don't get with Western RPGs.
It all comes down to this. Would you rather be eating a burger topped with a million ingredients, or would you rather eat a perfectly prepared meal by a chef using just the ingredients they wanted? I know what I'd prefer.
Aye, Joe makes a good point about linear games, but you know what? Doing the exact same as everyone else isn't always great fun now, is it? The problem with Japanese RPGs is you all start in the same place, you all finish in the same place, and everything else in between is pretty much the same for every single person playing it. Whereas, in the West we get, I don't know, a breath of fresh air.
Nigh is the time of the sword and axe.
I've been playing my way through the excellent Witcher 3 from CD Projekt Red, and I've come to realise that what makes RPGs like this special is how unique the game can be, how little stories can exist for me but be totally missed by someone else. Even the first area is stuffed full of interesting and totally unessential side missions, from hunting for a lost brother on a desolate battlefield to investigating an arson attack on the local dwarven blacksmith. And not only that, but the characters are, for the most part, far more interesting. Geralt of Rivia isn't a mercenary with a heart of gold, he's an absolute prick with a conscience. He can alternate between being an arsehole and slightly less of an arsehole.
I don't want to be reasonable.
Aha, so that's the way the wind blows.
He's not a cipher for the player, but a bold and well-rounded character that strides across 3 brilliant games. Moving beyond the Witcher series, the Mass Effect games give you control of how your character looks and fights, but it's still full of choice within the gameplay and the story itself. Maybe that's it. Choice is the most important thing and the most special ingredient missing from so many JRPGs, and while it's great to feel like you're being directed towards the next big event, it's sometimes better to find your own path there, something that is yours and not written down in a walkthrough or on a guide. It's the same when you look at the combat you get in a Western RPG. The combat often aims to feel as action-packed as many of the big action games, while still allowing you a full variety of combat styles. You'll be engaged in massive fights against hordes of enemies, and if you're good enough, you'll dance amongst them, slicing and parrying or shooting and dodging, and having the absolute best time of it.
You get a sense of battle, a sense of tension in Western RPGs that you just don't see in the Japanese games. You know what, the most exciting thing you're going to see in a Japanese RPG is a bunch of 3 people lining up to batter a chicken.
What's wrong with Battle Chicken? You see, what Scott's revealed there is his own ignorance when it comes to JRPG battle systems. Of course, sometimes they do look like the world's most rigid line dance, but what's important in a battle system is tactics and big special moves. And a bloody great battle theme as well. In fact, there's a lot of important things in a battle system, alright?
Here's a turn-based battle. Here's an action-based battle. Here's a real-time / turn-based hybrid. Here's well, if you can work out what's happening here, then let me know. What I'm trying to get at here is that every Eastern RPG has its own unique, deep and satisfying combat system. Final Fantasy X HD and a lot of classic Final Fantasy games might go for the quintessential formation-based chicken battering, as Scott would put it, but that system allows a huge amount of control over what every character on your team does each turn. It's all about setting up the perfect combination of characters and abilities and using the ingredients to make your own strategy. Loads of developers use the same basic setup in completely different ways. It doesn't always work, but it's great fun learning the ins and outs of them. Here's Xenosaga 2, the weak link in that trilogy, with a combat system that turned a lot of people off, but only because it was hugely complex to learn. There are no quick battles here where you have to play the long game, breaking down enemy defences and building up power, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash giant strings of team attacks.
Bye bye.
Want something completely different? How about the Tales series, where each game has its own chaotic real-time battle system? Sometimes it seems more like a fighting game than an RPG, but it works brilliantly, and the dreaded battle fatigue of many RPGs just doesn't appear. Basically, in a Tales game, you end up seeking out fights instead of avoiding them. So you can keep your Witcher fights. I've got plenty of amazing, varied and satisfying battle systems that I'd rather be playing. And that's not the only variation you get in JRPGs. There's such a wide variety of settings and mythologies to sink into. Yes, there's your classics like sci-fi and medieval fantasy, but then you get games that just can't be classified, like high school students fighting nightmarish demons after school, or roguish pirates flying through the sky, or acrobatic gun battles in a steampunk dystopia.
I don't think I'm the only one that will say I'm bored of seeing yet another stone grey castle.
Variety? Joe is forgetting himself here. While a lot of Japanese games have amazing looking surroundings, they've also got their fair share of big brown fields and big long corridors. I mean, look at Final Fantasy XIII. That was one big corridor from beginning to end. Joe's just clutching at straws here.
Let's see if I can find a grey castle in any of this footage. This looks a bit like a glorious sunset. No, come on, there must be some dreary looking footage here somewhere. Let's check this footage of a windswept moor. That's weird. Right, I'll go and check and see all the grey castles in Fallout 3. Oh wait, is that two distinctly different settings? Looks like Japan doesn't have the monopoly in that now, doesn't it? Alright, I'll admit, many Western RPGs do have a reputation for falling back on some pretty common tropes like wastelands or crusty old castles. But have you ever heard of a little book called The fucking Lord of the Rings? That's right, if it's good enough for big Jerry Tolkien, it's good enough for me. Anyway, looking beyond the surface, you'll find so many details hiding away in Western RPGs, little nooks and crannies that have been masterfully crafted to make the game world feel fully rounded and lived in. Whether it's coming across a bandit hideout in Witcher 3 or exploring a star system in Mass Effect, so much of the storytelling in Western RPGs is tied to how you explore the rich and interesting environments. Look at the recent release of Pillars of Eternity from Obsidian. The story in the game is communicated just as much by the surroundings as it is through text and conversations. Now, you couldn't set that game anywhere else without changing the whole thing. It's so intrinsically tied to that older style of fantasy setting. And what's wrong with that? Nothing. That's real escapism. You know what? A beautiful game like The Witcher 3 with its classically inspired world will age far better than a game where a bunch of teenagers wander down a straight road while interesting things happen off in the distance.
And Jesus, don't even get me started on some of the characters in those games. Full of teenagers, full of the most irritating people you'd ever want to meet. And don't even get me started on the voice acting.
What's wrong with the voice acting? Oh, I see.
Aye, alright, there are a lot of JRPG protagonists with nary a pube between them. I'll admit that, but while there isn't much variation in the main characters' ages in these games, you can't argue that there isn't variation in what they wear. JRPGs have some of the most beautiful, outlandish costumes and designs you can get. Even just within Final Fantasy X, you've got a surfer dude, a priestess, a beastman and a goth with a million belts. They all look unique and colourful and they all sport some sweet threads. Although I do wish Tidus would decide if he wanted to wear shorts or not. And if you cast your net out wider into the sea of JRPGs, you'll find spiky-haired soldiers, sci-fi heroines, roguish thieves, arse-kicking androids, fantasy Elvis cosplayers, and my favourite JRPG trope, the old man. Put simply, JRPGs have the best line in old men you can get. There's nothing cooler than having a wise old man in your team who can also beat the hell out of a bunch of nasties. There are loads to choose from, but if I had to choose a favourite, it'd be Drachma from Skies of Arcadia, a one-armed grumpy old skydog who fits his tiny fishing ship with a giant fucking harpoon. You know, because he can.
Find me any old guy in one of your boring Lord of the Rings wannabes that's even half as cool as one of those guys. Go on, just try it.
Old men, I'll show you some prime cuts of aged beef.
First up to bat, we have everyone's favourite American president Martin Sheen as the splendid and mysterious elusive man in Mass Effect 2 and 3. In the series, he leads a secretive human rights group across the galaxy and takes a keen interest in the actions of Commander Shepard in his or her battle against the Reapers. He's also pretty pivotal to the plot in the third game, but you know what? We're not going to go there.
No one wants to admit it, but humanity is under attack.
Maybe if Martin Sheen isn't satisfying you, then how about motherfucking Jean-Luc Picard, who voices Uriel Septim VII in Elder Scrolls Oblivion?
I have seen the gates of Oblivion.
And although he looks like an occasionally fresh-faced chap, Geralt, the sexiest main character from any RPG, western or otherwise, is about 100 years old by the time you play the third game, and he's still fighting monsters and still trying to get his Nat King Cole whenever he's not tracking down griffins.
Old men are great and everything, but maybe it'd be great if Western games had more, I don't know, youthful characters in them. In Japan, you get a great variety of different types of characters. Thinking about it, what's great about the RPG genre is you get so many different options. I mean, yeah, you've got this great big dirty burger that's sating me in my awful hunger, but at the same time, maybe you want something a bit lighter, a bit different. You know what? Sometimes it's great to have a big plate of chips. Sometimes maybe you just want some gyoza.